right?
Mm,
And if you break it up into those three categories, you can only sum up that what you could become is the stuff that you know and the stuff you know you don't know. But what about all the other information that you have no idea, you don't even know?
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to a book review edition of the Share.care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own best interest to help others. And today, it is my great pleasure and wonderful pleasure to welcome Victor Calbrese. Now, Victor is a technology and improvement speaker. He's the founder of DeskSide, which helps solve business challenges by leveraging the right technology. He's a proven problem solver, and he has an uncanny ability to connect with people and helps you solve both business and personal challenges holding you back. Plus, the point of today's interview is he's the author of Accessing Your True Potential, 4 core principles to being the best version of you. Plus, on top of this, he's also my very good friend. Welcome, Victor.
Hey, Damien, how are you, man?
Wonderful, man. It's always great to chat with you. Your book, I've read it a couple of times now, and you've also got the workbook. Do you want to take us back to what was the inspiration for writing the book in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. I love telling the story. So I'm a father of 5 children, and about I think it's like I don't know 6 years ago or so, I was sitting in my home office, and I was just contemplating all the education that I went through, both schooling and all the books I've read, and I was just sitting there thinking, I was going, my goodness, I'm 42 years old, 41 years old, and my children would have to go down a similar path that I went through just to get to the same exact point that I was at that moment. I'm like, as a father, we always want to do better. We want to try to do as much for our children as possible. I said, there's got to be a way for me to short circuit this.
Mm,
So I sat down and I started mapping out all the different things that I read, all the self-improvement books, everything that I've read, into what I thought was the bare minimum of what's necessary to access that true potential, to access that person that sometimes comes out when you least expect it. And when that person comes out and it's like, oh my God, who was that? Why can't I be that person more often? And I sat down, I
mm,
drew out the 4 core principle of what makes me the very best so that I could have my kids read something and say, hey, read this one book, not 300, just one book. Read that. It's going to take you 4 hours. And then from there, they could start their own journey, but it's a short circuit for them.
I love that because I have the same experience where I've read many books, and there's a lot of sometimes contradictory information, but there's probably a couple of key ones. And what you've done, and in your book, certainly you've consolidated that down into 4 key areas to focus on. You've got health, clarity, peace, and power. But I love in chapter 2, you start with, there is no man living who isn't capable of doing more than he thinks he can do, which is a quote by Henry Ford. What was the inspiration of having that quote at the start of your book? What stood out for you? What grabbed you from that quote?
Well, Henry Ford is an absolute hero of mine. What he accomplished in his life and how he transformed the world in his own in his own way. I mean, not little, but was amazing to me. And it kind of resonated to me or with me. how much a person can actually grow. And it's only as you grow and it's only as you achieve a better version of yourself that you could start seeing there's more. There's more. Like someone that sits here thinking about what they could accomplish in life, and even if you let yourself dream, it's never going to be as much as what you're actually capable of achieving.
Mm.
And when you start putting these things in your life and you start actually being someone that you never thought you could be, and then you sit down and start thinking about it, it's like there's more there. And everyone has more to offer to the world, to themselves, to their family than they even know themselves.
Mm. So it's awakening that what you actually have is, don't limit yourself to who you think you are now. That there's this whole other realm out there that you're not even aware of that is available to you. Is that what you're getting at with that?
Yeah, so the best way I could sum it up is I took this landmark course a while back, and one of the things or the one of the biggest things that I learned in that course, and it was like this intensive 3-day course. You go there and they talk about all these different things about how to improve yourself and how to become a better version of yourself. But one of the things that really hit me, and they did it really early on, is they showed this chart, and it was just a
Mm.
circle, it was a pie chart, and on the pie chart, they had this little sliver. They had two little slivers. And it's something like 2% of all the information out there is stuff we know that we know.
Mm.
Then there's like another 4% of the stuff we know we don't know. And
Mm.
then there's like 90 something percent of information out there that we have no idea we don't know. Right.
Mm.
And if you break it up into those three categories, you can only sum up that what you could become is the stuff that you know and the stuff you don't know. But what about all the other information that you have no idea, you don't even know?
Mm. Because that falls into that category of the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And that's why as you start putting these different things into your life, you're going to start becoming better. And as you become better, you're going to know that you could be even better. And then you're going to be
Hmm.
better. And then you could know you could be better. And it's just a constant evolution of oneself.
And you can't go backwards. Is that right? Once you move to a certain level, you can't go backwards.
Well, once that glass ceiling is broken, you tend to, only go up. Now, the one caveat to that is there's plenty of negative things in the world that you can also add to your life that can bring you down. You're
Yeah.
going to know you're going down, but there is always a way to spiral backwards.
Yeah. And what about the workbook? Because the workbook that goes with it, and I love how you've set that out. There's certain steps. How did the workbook come into being?
So the workbook was a passion project after I wrote the book, because now one thing that always happens to me, and I don't know, we could talk about your experience too, Damien, with all the books you've read. There's two things that I learned from a lot of the books that are out there. One is they're very niche. There's a very specific reason that book is being written, right? So
Mm.
when you're picking up 98% of the books out there, they're about to teach you one specific lesson about habits or about sleep or about nutrition, right? But they're very specific.
Mm.
The other thing that I learned is that there's a lot of great books out there, but there's no means to actually take the information you learned and put them into your life, right?
Mm.
So the only way to actually do that is to practice the teachings within those books. And someone like myself that's writing a book that has all these different lessons. I mean, my book is short, but it's full of so much information because it's taking information from all these different places and putting them into one place.
Mm.
So the workbook was a way for me to say, if I can get people to just sit down on this page and write something about their life that has to do with the lesson that's in the book. Now I've got the reading of the book or the auditory learning of actually listening to the book. Then they're actually sitting there and writing out their own personal experiences on a piece of paper. I've got that much more potential for those people to actually learn what I'm trying to teach them. On
Mm.
top of that, I feel like that workbook one day in the very near future is going to make it to become some sort of program, because I want to make it into a seminar where I'm actually teaching this information from that workbook.
Mm. So it was a way of giving people a practical way of actually implementing what's in the original book.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's different styles of learning. You got people that are visual learners, experiential learners, auditory learners. So I'm trying to cover as many bases as possible. And one of the things that workbook covers is it gives people an experiential way of learning the lessons that are in the book.
Because that's one of the things, and you talked about that as well. From this process of learning books and reading books. And learning books, I think that was a misnomer from my perspective, because I know from my experience, I read a ton of books, but really didn't learn much from them. Certainly not at an unconscious level. I didn't change who I was. I went, oh yeah, I know that, but knowing's different from doing. We know, we've all had that experience where we've thought we haven't known something and we've done it and surprised ourselves how well we've done, and we've also had the opposite where we've thought we were really good at something and then we've done it and fumbled it a lot. Is that where the workbook's coming from? It's to give you that actual practical experience, that because you talk about habits in the book. Is it
Mhm.
about giving a practical way of helping people change their habits?
Yeah, it's absolutely that. It has so many multitudes of reasons to its existence, because yes, building habits starts with doing something, right? I've read so many books where after you read the book, you put it down and you never did anything with it, right? You
Yeah.
tried to put one or two things into your life. So the workbook does do that for you. The other thing that I'm trying to do in that book, and you'll see it in the workbook, is you can actually put your life into the lessons that I'm providing, right? Because I ask you, what do you want to be? And you have to
Mm,
write it down. So putting a piece of you into what you're trying to achieve with the lessons learned from the book is huge, because now you're marrying what you've learned or what you're trying to learn with your experiences, your past, your future, your wants, your needs, and that's going to propel you into that accessing your true potential.
yeah. And from that perspective, 'cause I mean, I did that. It wasn't until I picked a book, and it wasn't even a book, it was an audio, and I just listened to it over and over again, and then it started to integrate into who I was. And that was, I think it was just that forced repetition where because I was listening to it, it was like a hammer banging it into me until I finally learned that, when you actually need to learn something and take it on board before it becomes part of your life, before it's going to have an impact. And
Yeah.
is that, from that perspective, when you talk about habits within the book, is that, that process where you go, okay, we've got a habit, you can't just get rid of a habit, you've got to replace it with something else. Is that the process you're trying to get people to do, is to go, hey, you need to, if you want something different from your life, you've got to do things differently?
Yeah, the first thing is education, because a lot of people just don't know, right?
Mm,
So, and there's a lot of stuff in that book that's just a matter of here. These are the facts, right? There's nothing in that book that I haven't experienced myself. There's nothing in that book that's false in any way. There's just a lot of truth in there, right? So
mm,
that's A, educate. B, and I make this early on in the book. I tell everybody, try not to jump into everything. There's a lot here. There is a lot.
mm,
So you can't say, I am going to take on every single wheel, every single thing that's in the book today. You're going to fail, right?
yep,
Then I talk about the 80% rule. The 80% rule is everybody's got this fixation, especially when they learn something new, is they're going to do 100. They're going to go all the way, put the pedal to the metal and give it everything they got. Well, that's actually not the smartest way to do things. A lot of times you're going to fail trying to do that, because if you try something new and you give it everything you got, a lot of times you're going to burn out, and
mm,
that's true with nutrition, that's true with fitness, any kind of routine you're trying to put in your life, changing your relationships, all the stuff that's in the books. I said, hey, all you really need is 80%. If you
mm,
think that X is what you need to be at 100%, try just not go down to 20%, to 80% of what you think is necessary, and see how much that is improving you. One of my favorite authors in Atomic Habits, he makes the point of doing 1% more every day. If you
mm,
do that 1% more every day, you'd be amazed at how much you're going to accomplish over the course of 12 months.
yeah,
It's compounding. I think it comes out to like 33 or 34% increase over that 12-month, and it always only becomes exponentially more as you keep going. So give it 80%, start slow, do one lesson, then put it into your life, because this is truly something that has taken me years. There's stuff that I still try to put into my life. I don't do all this stuff all the time. It's
mm.
impossible. We're human, right? Like I tell everybody, I think I have 10 pounds. I got to do a little more on the nutrition side, right? On the fitness side. But knowing that, is going to get me back in my routines, is going to get me back in those habits that are healthy and get me into that true potential.
Do you think it is that what you're talking about there, that 1%, that people dismiss it as not really being, they haven't succeeded. They've made a little accomplishment and go, oh, I didn't really do very well, and they give up. Do you think it's because they don't value that or understand? And Einstein said that. Was it the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest, which applies, as
Yep.
you said, it applies. You improve 1% every day, that compounds. It's not linear, it compounds.
Hmm.
Do you think it's because people don't understand? They think those small little wins, because it's easy to look at, and you and I, we've had that discussion, and the listeners know my traffic light talk, where I used to think I was getting all the red lights until I started counting them because I'm mainly retentive, um, and I realized I was getting way more green lights because I actually counted them, but I
Oh
was
God, you
focusing on the red
counted
ones.
them.
Yeah, no, I did. I thought I told you that story. I was, living in Perth, and there's a lot of traffic lights going up the coast to where my girlfriend lived. And I'd get, obviously I'm excited because I'm going to see my girlfriend. I'm going to get lucky. It's kind of cool, So,
Yeah.
but every red light, I'm getting red light, it's getting in the way. And but then I thought, am I getting all the red lights? So I had a little notepad next to me as I'm driving, and I'd tick off red or green as I went through every traffic light. And it turned out I was getting way, 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 way more green lights. Just it was the red ones were standing out. And do you think, is that what you're talking about when you go, okay, this 1%? Do we tend to focus a little bit too much on, we can look at all the things that we didn't do in the day, because usually our list is way too long to start with. It's not even achievable. Like you said, you've got all these things in the book. There's no way you can do all that at once. Is it, do people demotivate themselves by that focus of going, oh, there's so much there I didn't do, rather than going, oh, that 1% actually did that really well?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that as you're saying this stuff, one of the biggest problems in today's society is instant gratification. Everybody's
Mm.
always looking for that instant gratification, and the whole world is built around it, right?
Yeah.
Social media is built around that. Everything we do is built around trying to get some sort of joy. But the most beautiful things in life take a lot of time. And if you do that little bit, right? A baby takes 9 months, man. Yeah, and
Well,
anybody
even
that's a
the
father.
boys, if you're listening, the part about making the baby, it takes a little bit of time to get her there. But if you get her there, you're going to get it a lot.
But great point, Damien.
Well, it's part
But
of, this instant gratification. Sometimes we forget that it does take that, but the reward at the end of that is really, really rewarding.
that's exactly the whole point, right? In relationships, in anything you do, anything you put the time in, and it's the little wins that make the biggest joy, the biggest rewards in your life, right? And people have a tendency to get into this like victim mentality, which I can't
Mm,
stand. That's one of my the things that sets me off, right? And they purposely fail. They purposely
mm,
get into the mindset you're talking about, so they don't have to do the hard work,
yeah.
right? You get lazy, and it's like, oh, 1%. Who wants that? It's like I'm going back to eating ice cream and Oreos, right? Oh, I'm forget this routine of getting up in the morning. Forget about reading another book, and they're never going to improve. And then they're like, oh, life sucks. Well, life sucks because of that. You're not doing that 1% improvement. I mean, and
Mm,
maybe you could do 2, maybe you could do 3%, but celebrate your victory. Celebrate every little thing that makes you happy instead of always being such a victim.
mm. Celebrating the victories. That's really important, isn't it? Because I mean, when you look at what you're talking about, that 1%, and we know this from video games. When you look at that little character, the little Italian guy, Mario, he got that one gold coin. That wasn't even 1% of what he needed to achieve to get to the end and save the girl. But we get a little buzz out of that. We get that one little coin.
Yeah.
So we know, well, certainly people creating video games know that works. We know it from playing, for those that have played video games know that, we get that little buzz. Yet we don't do that in our life. What do you think stops people from realizing it's those little wins that are really important?
It's that victim mentality. They get into a bad place where they get comfortable with just losing. They get comfortable with the fact that everything is so hard, and it's
Mm,
just easier to sit in front of a TV and just let life pass you by. It's easier to drink from a bottle or keep those bad habits because they just give you that little bit of gratification instead of building who you could be in the future. And that's just the sad reality of the human race is it's so much easier to do all the wrong thing than it is to do all the right thing. But the people that do all the right things eventually get this huge reward, and then everybody that's looking at them is like, hate that guy. I can't believe, look how lucky he is. I guarantee you luck had nothing to do with it. It's all the
Yeah.
hard work, no participation in trophies in life.
Well, I wonder about that. I have this thing where I wonder about the hard work component. If it's required, I agree, but whether it's hard or not, because I look at, I was watching a little video recently, and they're talking about James Bond,
Uh-huh.
and and how he always gets the girl. And but I was looking at that going, well, is that really true? Because in a James Bond movie is what, 2 hours long, and he might interact with what, or sorry, they might show you him interacting with a couple of girls that he gets now, and I relay that to my friend that I had in the army, Shane, who dated these amazing women. And we're always, because he wasn't that bright, so we're wondering how is it that he's dating these amazing women. I mean, he was good looking, and we obviously thought he was well hung, because that was the only other thing we could put it down to at that age. But I asked him one day. I said, I told him, I said, Shane, you're not that bright. How is it you're dating all these great women? And because they were smart, they were beautiful, they were kind, they were just amazing. And he turned to me and he turned into this like wise old sensei. He put his arm around me and says, Damien, what you don't see is I ask a lot. Most of them say no. You just see the ones that say yes. And I was putting that from that perspective of going, there's nowhere in a James Bond movie where it says these are the only girls he's ever asked out. And in reality, he's asked out probably, if you look at the entire series of James Bond movies, at the most, he's probably asked out 30 or 40 women.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is,
True.
and I compared that to my friend Shane, he asked literally, it was hundreds that he'd asked out who'd said no. So is it a case that we're actually creating our own false reality? Because you talk about things that are holding you back in your workshop, in your book. I've got my notes here. You go, well, what keeps you reaching from your goals in the basics part of the workbook, which relates to what you've written in the book.
Mhm.
Is it a case where we set an unrealistic expectation that this is what's required to succeed, and if we don't do that, we then give up because we think we're not doing it? But the reality is we've set an unrealistic expectation to start with.
Yeah, I mean, that I think that the way I'm going to answer that question is really, it's all about self-awareness, and I would say
Mm,
90 somewhat percent of the world has zero self-awareness. They're just going through life on autonomous mode.
mm,
And they really don't understand what's going on, and then blame luck or blame God or blame whatever to why they're in the situation that they are. And the reality of it is that, and especially that exercise in the book that you're talking about is really trying to get those people to put down on paper what they got in their heads, because they're
mm,
giving them a different view. So hopefully I'm pulling out a different perspective. Right. So
mm.
if you put those things on there and you start reading exactly why you think you're failing, or in your own words, you start writing down why those things happen to you, you may get a little different perspective. And that's what I'm trying to do from that perspective of that exercise.
Yeah, because I was wondering about that, because you see those little charts or the graphic all the time where it shows, the plan, and they've got the person on a bike or car, whatever, and they're here, and they've got this nice little smooth road, and they get to the goal. And then they go, what actually happens? And they got below it, and it's like this thing that goes all over the place, and it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but I look at that and I go, the lower one, that's the reality. You're going to get these things that have come up. Certainly, I mean, if you have the skill to get there, I put that in the context of my son's karate sensei. He's a seventh Dan black belt, and
Uh-huh.
I said to him, because we're talking about things are hard or easy, and he says hard, and I said, well, is it hard or is it relative to your level of skill? Because I said, you're a seventh Dan black belt, if I asked you to do grading at a yellow belt level, how hard would that be for you?
Right.
And he goes, it'd be very easy. And I said, so it's not that the task is hard, it's whether it's hard or easy is relative to your skill. And I have the same with a friend who's a venture capitalist. He's, mega wealthy. And he talks about business, and he goes, yeah, business is pretty easy, pretty straightforward. But he has that knowledge. And you're the same. You know, from you look at a business plan and generally whether it's going to succeed or fail, or has more chance of success than it does of failure, depending on how it's put together, because you have that knowledge. Is that a case too where people make, from that perspective, their perception that it's hard, but really doing 1% a day is not that, it's not hard in my mind.
Yeah, but that to me goes back to that that you don't know what you're actually capable of when you start doing it. It's like, the way I like to tell people the story is when you start working. I remember when I started working, the minimum wage was like $7.35 an hour, something like that, right? I'm giving away my age now.
No, I'm in your category. It's okay.
Yeah, but
I'm
I
older,
came out
I
of
think.
school. Are you? I think by a year. But
You've just
when I
been
came out of
busier. You've got
school,
more children.
I do. When I came out of school, I got a teaching job for $35,000 a year, right? And when I started working, I was like, oh, $35,000. It was affordable from $7.35 an hour to $35,000. That's amazing. That's twice, right? And I was like, this is great. They're gonna do less work, and then you start paying your bills, and you start saying, you know what? If I could only make $10,000 more, $10,000 more, I'll make $45,000. I'll be in a great place, and then it becomes $65,000, and then it's always expanding, because as you grow and as your ceilings and your glass limits and these things that we put on our heads are, these barriers are lifted, we start seeing something else. Right. And that's what's going on with people, is they don't really know. They don't really know until they do. That 1%, like you said, may be really, really difficult to someone that's never done whatever. But once they do it, they're like, this wasn't that bad. Let me add another 1%, another 1%. I'll tell you another story that really encompasses this. I used to be 350 pounds, and it was hard for me to walk around. It was hard for me to do anything, right? But one day I realized that I couldn't keep going like this. I was just in a bad place. I needed to lose weight. So I just convinced myself that all I'm going to do is take a walk, right? Taking a walk at that point, like getting up from the couch and actually going for a walk around the block, was hard, right? But it got easier. And then when it got easier, that walk around the block became a walk around the lake, right? And as that got easier, that walk around the lake became a little jog. And as that got easier, I went to title boxing and I started doing those boxing classes, right? So there is a level that, depending on where your skill set is, where you are in life, that it's going to look like it's hard. That's why I tell everybody, don't try to do 100%. Just do that 1%, do that 80%, whatever it is that you can do. Never that 100%. It's too much, right? And then you'll see you just little improvement. And the most important thing is that when it gets easy, make it harder. My business coach tells me all the time, live outside your comfort zone. If you're not outside your comfort zone, you're not growing.
So is that what the book is? It's an awakening to, when we look at the fundamentals of what is underlying the book. Is it an awakening that what you really need to be doing is just do a little something on a regular basis? Is that what you're getting to?
Absolutely. And as you do it, and that's one of the fundamental principles that I teach in the book, is as you do, or as you get, I like to call them wheels, right? And I say, let's get your health wheel spinning, or let's get your clarity wheel. But and I tell everybody, start with the health wheel, because if you get your body straight, it becomes easier to do the other stuff. But each one of these wheels feeds on itself. Are you going to get them all spinning super fast at 100% for the rest of your life? No. It is impossible. I don't think that unless you're superhuman for a short amount of time, you could probably get it running for a decent spin. But the point is, get one thing going. It'll help you get the other one going. It'll help you get the other one going. When you got them all spinning, you're going to have access to this person, and then you can grow. Once you grow, you add a little more, and you do it all over again. And you just keep going. But it is a challenge. It's an awesome challenge. I mean, I'm not the same person I was even 3 years ago, right? Just because I just keep getting better.
Is that, because you mentioned that you've got the 4 principles wheels. You've got health, clarity, power, and peace. And you said start with the health wheel, getting that sorted. Now you've got fitness and nutrition as the pillars under there, because you've got 6 pillars as well.
Yes.
Is that, so from that perspective, is it a case of do we need to, what you're suggesting there is to focus down and go, okay, rather than try and do everything all at once, just focus on the health side of things? Is that, and make that a priority? Is that what you're aiming for?
So I even say let's take it down even one step further. So like you said, the health wheel is broken up into nutrition and fitness, and the clarity wheel is broken into one pillar, which is effective routines. The peace wheel, peace in the heart, I like to say, is all about relationships and family and spiritual mental health, right? So I give things around those pillars, and then power is all around continuous learning.
Mm.
Within each of those pillars, there's information that I talk to. Like, for instance, nutrition is going around reducing sugar, supplement needs, increasing organics, understanding macros, eliminating poisons from your diet. So there's lessons that are very important. And I'm almost telling you, start with nutrition and reducing your sugar intake. That's it. That's the only thing I want you to concentrate on. And don't concentrate it at 100%. Don't give up sugar all at once. It's just not possible. And I'm not saying you should ever give up sugar for the rest of your life. You got to have some of it in your life. I mean, I'm not giving up ice cream. I don't know about everybody else, but there's things in my life I'm just not
Yeah, I
giving
had
up, right?
chocolate fudge last night too. So
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's impossible. But you got to start there. Use that, do that for a certain period of time. That's your 1%, right?
Mhm.
And then move on to the next one. And as you get into like effective routines, there's stuff like sleep needs, bedtime routine, wake up routines, and you start adding those things into your life. Some of these things that are within the pillars, the information that I give within each of these pillars will take months to get incorporated into your life. Meditation, it's an awesome practice to get into. If you're not meditating, that's something that you need to learn more about. There's a vast number of ways to meditate. It's not just the one thing that everybody comes to mind where you're sitting uncomfortably on top. That's not the only way to meditate. I actually meditate right before I go to sleep, laying down in my bed, right?
Yeah.
Very comfortable. It helps me get to sleep. It's part of my nighttime routine. But there's ways to meditate. But that is a great, healthy thing to do for your mind, right?
Mm.
So there's so many layers of it. But meditation itself, it's something I'm still working on. I don't think I'm very good at it. I think that I don't think anybody's good at it. I think that's one of the things that I've learned about meditation. It's just being not good at it is what makes you good at it, right?
There
So
is that
there's a lot
perception
of
with
stuff.
meditation. I agree, where you have this perception that someone can sit there and just completely blank out their mind and nothing happens. But I've never yet met someone that can do that.
I'm sure like those monks in the mountains can do it. I don't know if I want to be that dedicated to meditation to get there. But there's a lot of stuff in here that takes multitude months, if not years, to master. And that's why I said just do one, do it as best you can, get it to a certain point, add that to your skill bag of tricks, right? And you start becoming better. There's stuff in here about family and relationships. There is so many lessons that took me years to learn. Lessons that even though I knew, I couldn't practice, right?
Mm.
Like getting toxic people out of your life. That is a
Mm.
tough lesson to learn. That is not
Saying
easy.
no to somebody.
Yeah, well, saying no is
Was it
tough,
saying no? Isn't I don't want you in my life? Is what I'm getting at. Yeah.
well, and add to that it's a family member, a
Yeah.
close family member. What do you do there, right? It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to practice. It's a tough thing to learn, but it's one of the best things that I did learn, right?
Mm.
So there's a lot of things in there that are just going to take some time.
And so that's what the principle is to again have this global key areas to encapsulate everything, because you mentioned that before. A lot of books are niche, but what you've done is you've brought together all the key fundamentals or key principles, four wheels, which then have the six pillars underneath that, and to give you so not to approach your book as, okay, let's read this and fix this one thing, but really your book is a life journey. Is that where you're getting to with that?
Absolutely, 100%. You hit the nail right on the head, and it's like one of the things that I've learned is that you have a finite amount of energy that you
Mm.
can give to any numerous amount of tasks during the day, but you're never going to hit everything. It's impossible, right?
Mm.
You're going to get tired. You're going to run out of steam. So the idea is get that energy, put it into places in your life that benefit your life, instead of feeding the bad habits or feeding those negative things that pull you down in life. Put them
Yeah.
into the right habits. But before you can do that, you need information. You need to learn what those things are.
Mm. And is that where you start, certainly in the start of your book and the workbook, you talk about and you have a place to write out your goals. How important, when you say working that out, how important is it to work out what your goals are, where you're headed?
Yeah, I could do an entire course on goal setting because goals are one of those things that many people think they know what they want until they start
Mhm.
writing down their goals. Because a lot of times it's not what they're actually thinking. Like, I want a Ferrari. No, you don't. You want what that symbolizes to people,
Yeah, you
right?
want the sexy
Yeah.
girl coming up to you and going, "Ooh, Ferrari."
Yeah, exactly. I want $1 million. No, you don't. You want financial freedom, right? You don't want
Mm,
to have to go to work because you have to go. Like, there's so many things that I do this all the time because you have conversations with friends and with family, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, if I could only have. That's not what you want. So let's talk about it. And then
yeah.
as you start talking through it, so we could have an entire discussion just on goal setting. But yes, writing down what it is, and again, it's another one of those things to try to get some self awareness built up, because when you write down your goals, you start thinking about it, you start looking at it differently, get another perspective. It's like, oh, maybe that's not what I want.
Mm. Is that, I mean, and from that perspective too, do you think it's ordained that you've got to find who you are, or is it simply a matter of just choosing to do something?
Man, you got to do what makes you happy, right? The problem is that people, again, don't have enough self-awareness to figure that out. And honestly, those people that try to sit there and figure out, they're just wasting their time. Life is a matter of enjoying what you have in the moment right now, no matter
Mm,
what it is, good, bad, or otherwise. Just enjoy the part of life that you're at right now. If you spend all your life trying to find that thing that drives you, or that passion, or you're going to waste your entire life for some people, right? Some people are just lucky enough to fall into it, but why don't you just have fun with what you have? Enjoy the people that are in your life. Enjoy the things that you have in your life. Some of the happiest people in the world are piss poor.
mm.
They just enjoy life the way it is. And it's not that they don't want, it's not that they don't have needs. It's just that they understand that it's like, I'm here, might as well have fun.
Is that, I mean, from that perspective, because you guys in America, you do have some good things.
Yeah, a couple.
That I'm stirring for the Americans listening. I like you guys. I like NASCAR. It's one of my favorite sports. And BattleBots. You do that very well too. And from I do. It's like I can't wait for the next race to come out in the next episode of BattleBots. It's like it's my thing. But from that perspective, what you also did, you had a guy called Walt Disney who created the first ever feature length animated movie. And in that, when Snow White and the animals are cleaning the house, they sing Whistle While You Work. Is that a case of, when we look at it, as you said, be happy with what you got? Because we know now, and I'm pretty sure they didn't know when they made the movie, but we certainly know now that just thinking a happy thought, being grateful for what you have, produces dopamine and serotonin in your body. You don't have to do anything, you just have to think that. Is
Yeah.
that a case when you link that back to what you've got in your book about habits? Is it simply creating a mindset by habit that I'm going to enjoy what I'm doing? I'm going to find a way, again, from you guys in America. You had Mary Poppins, where she says, in every job that must be done, there's an element of fun. Find the fun, job's a game.
Mhm.
Is that, part of that process with what you're talking about in habits is finding that joy in it, but it's more about your mental attitude towards it as opposed to whether the job's enjoyable. So when we're talking, coming back, linking it back to what is your purpose, it's in life finding what your goal is. It's just choose a goal and choose to enjoy doing it. Is that where you're heading with that?
Yeah, and I think that your goals will change as you start doing stuff that, just because you may think, again, that's one of the things, and Victor's really good at this, man. I always told myself, oh man, if I only had this job, or if I only had this, or I'd be so happy. And then I got those things. And it's like, oh, not as happy as I thought I was gonna be, right? So you really just gotta enjoy, like, one of the things, I mean, I always told myself as a kid that I couldn't write.
Mm,
Oh, can't write, can't write, can't
yeah,
write, can't write.
have good writing genes.
And yeah, and one day I wrote a book, right? And it
Uh,
was like, when I told my family that I wrote a book, they're like, "What? You wrote a what?" Like, yeah, I wrote a book, and because I was so auto programming myself that I can't write since I was a little kid, I never realized how much fun that was.
Mm,
Was it torture? Was it a lot of work? Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't, like I tell everybody, writing a book is one of the most difficult challenges that I've ever had to do in my life. It was just a lot of willpower, but I had fun doing it. And like the reward that came after 3 years of sweat was amazing. Going back to that, with the joy of 1%. This
mm,
book is fantastic for that, because I really feel like, and I was so nervous to put it out there. I was like, people are going to read my soul, but it was a great amount of it was a great experience. I tell everybody that it was one of the best experiences of my life, even though it sucked doing it. Right, there was
mm.
times I sat there and I said, "What am I doing? I want to write a book." Right, and then
How
I
did you
got
get through
corrected
those
by all the
times?
editors. Huh?
How did you get through those times where you said there's times where you sat down, and what gave you the, you know, did you keep sitting there and work through it, or did you just go, throw the paper up in the air and come back and then later have some time to think about it? Talk us through that.
So that is a really great question. And the reason I got through it was because I had these wheels spinning. So the habits that I had in my life allowed me to do that work, right? So
Right.
because I had peace in my heart, I had clarity in my mind, I was healthy, and I was continuously learning. I was doing the things that were making me, I had the strength to do the hard stuff.
Hmm.
I could not have done this book while working, starting my companies, having my kids, taking care of my kids, having a relationship with my wife and my mom and my dad. I could have never done all these things, and I could never. Even willpower has a finite amount of energy, right?
Mm.
But that's why I was able to do it, is because I had all these things in my life.
So you had that balance first. So you had, I mean, obviously you mentioned about your health, which you lost the weight, and so
Mhm.
that wheel was spinning well,
Yep.
and then so that enabled you to do that. And that's where is that where you're coming to as well with the book. Within the book is going, okay, don't try and do everything all at once. I think you're giving me a lesson here. Don't try and do everything. We've had discussions in the pre-show. Um, don't what you're getting to is don't try and do everything all at once. Pick the thing that you need to focus on the most, and health is a good start, as you said, because you want it with a good foundation of health that gives you more energy to do other things. Is that where you're getting to, and that's what enabled you to do the book? You had all these other areas sorted out, which gave you that ability to do the book, and in those moments where you were going, this is really frustrating, because the other areas were performing well, you were able to draw from that for energy. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So one of my mentors, Jeff Jensen, great guy. He was one of the first, because I'm very much like you, Damien. I take on a lot of tasks and it falls off my plate and I just keep going, right?
Hmm.
But one of the lessons that Jeff taught me, he's like, Victor, if you had 10 things that you needed to accomplish, would you be happy with moving everything 1 inch or getting something done?
Mm.
Right? So you have 10 things and you move them 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, and it's like 3 feet away to get anything, one of these things done. It's just going to take you forever to get anything done. And what he
Mm.
taught me is all these are important. Prioritize, try to figure out the three that are most important, place your energy on those three and move them substantially so that you have that. Because that's the other side of it. Going back to satisfaction, you don't get
Mm.
satisfaction out of moving these things 1 inch. You
Yeah,
get satisfaction out of getting something done.
yeah. On that satisfaction side of things, because you mentioned that before, I want to touch on that, where you had these goals that you wanted to achieve, and sounded like they were material type things, and you got them, and you went, that's not quite there. And I relaying that to I've had a lot of, and certainly money buys a lot of experience.
Yep.
I've and I think I might have told you, flown to Nice, private helicopters, chauffeur driven helicopters, taken me and my family to Monaco, and that's really cool. It is certainly fun. There's
Yeah.
no doubt that was fun. And I've had lots of experiences like that in my life that were fun. But if that was all my life was, it certainly wasn't fulfilling. If I was to take that out and go, well, that was fun, and I would then be, if that was the only thing, I would be constantly chasing the next best thing. Because they talk about that with astronauts when they come back from the moon. They had that where they go, well, what's next? What else can I do? Is that, I mean, what's the difference there between the fulfillment and the fun from you? Going back to your experience where you achieved those goals and you went, oh, no, that's not that exciting. Um,
Yeah.
how do you differentiate that? How can someone who hasn't had that experience go, actually, what I'm seeing there in the culture, that it's all about having the success, but that's not really the part that fulfills you?
It's and that's where this becomes a little tricky of a conversation because you have to have a balance between chasing stuff you think you want, but you also
Mm,
have to just like follow the river of life,
yeah.
right? Because you don't know what you don't know. Again, going back to that lesson earlier on, and unless you let life kind of take you a little bit, you're never going to know what you really want to do, right?
Mm,
um, there may be things that you're just not aware of that if you just so goal driven, that the only thing you want is a mansion and a Ferrari and a jet, and you just go after that stuff, you may lose the love of family. You may
yeah.
not have so many other things that are so great. You may not read that book or see that piece of art that changes your mind or the way you think, or have that great friend that you got to help. There's so much more in life, and you definitely have to have goals. You definitely need to write them down, but also just enjoy life and see where it takes you, because you may find something you never knew you liked.
Mm. 'Cause where does that fit? And I know from knowing you that, your business desk side,
Hmm.
um, I don't think, I mean, yes, you wanted to make money out of that,
Hmm.
but I think underlying from knowing you that you actually wanted to help people was a primary driver. You wanted to make life easier for people, and that's just part of your character from knowing you. Is that, and I'm relaying that because I have lots of friends who are extremely wealthy. Um, but for them, even though they've got that wealth, when you look at their character, it's always about helping people, doing that, making other people's lives better. And is that the case? We need to get people to realize that it's not about having the stuff that makes your life better when you are better, when you are the right person, and basically approaching it from that attitude of helping, making the world a better place. That's when all this stuff actually not only comes, but it stays.
Yeah. I mean, I love helping people. That's just something that I enjoy doing. Maybe there's other people, introverts, that are not about that or about something else. But I think we have to all feed society in some way, whether that's helping people or helping the infrastructure or helping the educational system or helping in politics. There's so many different ways to help. It doesn't have to necessarily be donating money or donating time. There's ways, but I think we all have to feed society in some way. Like even me writing this book, I wrote it for my kids. I published it for everybody else,
Mm,
right? Because I could have easily just given the manuscript to my kids and be like, here. And I'm not doing it for fame. I'm not really doing it for anything more than, and I've had people read it and it's like, this book like changed my life. It made such a big difference. That's what I want, right? I'm not
mm,
I'm looking to make money off of the book. Even that side, like you said, I like technology. I understand it really, really well. And one of my frustrations with technology is that there's so many people taking advantage of other people because the other people don't understand technology as well as we do. And they're
mm,
like, oh, you need this. And then they charge them a fortune to do stuff that's really simple. It's not that difficult to do. So I like educating people. I have another talk that I do that's all around technology. And it's really giving away the secret sauce. I give away everything behind the curtain. And a lot of, other people in the business don't really appreciate me for it. But it's really because I want these CEOs and I want these business leaders to actually understand what they're getting themselves into. I just love seeing people grow. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
mm. And that falls, from what I'm hearing, falls under the peace wheel. Is that right? Part of that component is, having that gratitude and putting things out there to help people. That gives you that inner peace.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Relationships are a big part of having peace. There's a part in there about positive, negative moods, and what brings you into a positive mood is really important. And stay away from being into the negative or
Mm.
feeding that negative energy from coming in. So all that stuff is definitely part of the peace wheel.
So when someone picks up the book, obviously you read it in the order that it's written. That would be the ideal thing. But from that perspective as well, once you've done that, and from my side of things now, when I look at a book, it's more a case of, what do I want to get out of the book? Should someone start with that first before actually opening it up and going, okay, what's my objective in reading this book?
So the way I designed the book was I wanted it to be as short as possible and give you as much information as possible. I cut a lot of stuff out of the book. In fact, one of my business partners said, Vic, you should really make a series of books. Like, now that you have this one, make one on health, make one on clarity. And I have enough material to actually do that. But for the purposes of your question, the book is written in a way that you can eat that book in 3-4 hours, right? You
Mm.
could sit on a plane and you could easily eat it. Then at the end of the principal chapters, I actually have a list of all the books that were part of what made the information in that chapter valuable, right? So in the nutrition book, I talk about Dr. Catherine Hanahan's book, Deep Nutrition. That
Mm.
was a really important book in my life. So what I expect, or what people can do with my book, is read my book as if it's a big 50,000-foot view of what I feel is necessary for someone to learn. And
Mhm.
then based on that stuff, start putting those things and practice those things in your life. And you can always reference any one of the books that I have within each of the chapters and go read the book that feeds that specific thing you're trying to learn. Because don't forget, this is not something you're going to put into your life like this. It's going to take time. It's going to take years. Heck, it took me, the better part of 40 years to get the knowledge necessary and then put this into your life. So if you're able to do this in like 10 years, fantastic. You just overcame 75% of my struggles, right?
Mm.
So there's a lot of information. Take it slow. The big goal of accessing your true potential is to give you enough knowledge to start your path, to jumpstart your path into this accessing your true potential.
From that as well, in accessing your true potential, in the workbook, you've got a complete page that talks about what is your true potential, and then a big, big type underneath that, it has your ego.
Yeah.
And because I know from my experience, even working with the corporate clients I've had people where I've shown them very clearly, don't do this. It's going to cost you a lot of money. And they've done it, and it's cost, in one case, cost the company $14 million that it didn't need to pay.
Yeah.
Um, from that perspective, how much of the issues that people have, do you think falls into that category of they just completely ignoring what's in front of them?
So um it's tough because everyone is different, Damien. So I can't really generalize it, but
Mm.
I will tell you. Let me answer the question this way: you have to understand ego
Mm.
in order to answer your question. And ego is not a good or bad thing. Ego is a method that nature has devised to keep us alive, right? Ego early on was a way of warning us that there's a tiger hiding, or there could be a tiger hiding behind that bush, right?
Yeah.
So what ego will do is try to keep you safe, whether that safe propels you up in life or not. So
Mhm.
sometimes taking risk and that little voice telling you, hey, you shouldn't do that, right? Or that voice telling you should do that is ego, right?
Yeah.
Knowing when to walk away and use your head. And again, it's self-awareness. Being able to separate your mind from your ego, from yourself is something that I still struggle with, right?
Mm.
Um, but having enough self-awareness to understand that there is a problem in front of you. I have something in my head that's telling me to do X, Y, and Z. I have people telling me to do A, B, and C, and my gut's telling me to do this. Making that decision is tough. It's not easy. It's not easy for me. So that person that made that decision that cost them $14 million may have made that decisions no matter what you would have said, may have done the same exact thing after reading my book. It's just a matter of being enough self-aware to actually separate your ego from there and then making a different decision if that's where you're going to go.
Does that come back to what we were talking about before, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And where that goes to is actually when you realize there's a lot you don't know, you actually listen more. And I
Mm.
reframe that because for me, when we at the start of this year, I was looking at New Year's resolutions. I'm going, well, I've got all my goals, got all that. And then I went and I remembered it came up. I'm not sure where I heard it, but it was talking about the guy that had just won the world championships for Toastmasters, and he was flying home with his friends, and he walked into a bookshop and bought a book on public speaking.
Mm.
And they said to him, "So you've just won the world championship for Toastmasters. What are you buying a book on public speaking for? You're the world's best." And he goes, "Well, you can always be better."
Yep.
And so I thought about that and went, well, I'm a good listener, but maybe I need to listen more. So I set that as my goal, and that was the only resolution that I had, was to listen more. And I've noticed just the fact, even though I was a good listener, my this year has been profoundly different, more so because I'm listening even more than I was before. And I'm just wondering, from that perspective, when we talk about the ego, how much of that is going through that journey of realizing that the more you know, the more you realize you don't know, which then creates that awakening and awareness, as you talked about, of I need to listen more.
Yeah. Well, that's why continuous learning is the pillar that supports power, because I truly believe that knowledge is power,
Mm.
right?
That
And
was the motto of my school.
yeah,
Knowledge
I
is
mean,
power. That was.
great motto. But the reality of it is, you're absolutely right. I mean, and if you have enough knowledge, you have you can never have enough knowledge, because you're never going to learn everything that you have in the world, right?
Mm.
So the idea is that to strive to keep learning, to
Mhm.
strive to become a better version of yourself, and as you keep adding these things to your life, you may make different decisions. You're gonna make different. You may take a different direction in life. There's so much. I get so excited over it because there's so much that could happen if you're open to the idea that you're not the smartest person in the room. There's
Mm.
always more for you to learn, and you know that's why that's great that a speaker that won such an award goes and gets a book on speaking. That's freaking awesome. That's exactly what I'm trying to do with all the stuff that I'm teaching everybody in there. Is like, learn the 50,000 foot view, but don't stop there. Keep going.
Is that a case, though? Because when we look at today's society, especially with social media and things like that, there's so many people out there putting their opinion out there, and getting offended and putting more opinion. How dare you say that? And we look at, and we've had that discussion about, for me, I see debates as two narcissists beating each other over the head with their own opinion without actually listening to what the others. That's why I don't like debates. And your last presidential election was a great example of what that is.
Of a circus.
Yeah, but is it a case where we from that perspective, when you're dealing with the ego, it's having that awareness, self-awareness, what you're talking about, to actually step back and listen, to really listen, as opposed to say, okay, I'll put my opinion aside for the moment. And we've all heard that comment that opinions are like buttholes. Everyone's got one and most stink. So I'm gonna take that on a balance of probability. My opinion might stink a little bit. I'm gonna put it to the side and maybe listen. Do you think, from that perspective, having that approach would help people make those transitions much easier?
Yeah, I think that listening is definitely a skill that gets better with practice.
Mm,
And you know that's one of the things, like, I've told you this on your other show. I'm like, I have my own opinions, but I'm always open-minded.
mm,
And I'll listen to pretty much anything. Some people turn my stomach when they start talking, but I'm not going to put them down. I'm not going to say that's a dumb idea. I'm going to listen. Am I going to accept it? Not necessarily. Have I changed my mind? Absolutely. But I only was able to change my mind because I gave the person the opportunity to teach me something,
mm,
right? I mean, if you think you know it all, you're never going to learn anything, right? So you definitely need to listen. You definitely got to and listen with your mind, because I'm
mm.
not talking about hearing a sound that's coming out of somebody's mouth,
Yeah.
right? Listen and try to learn, try to empathize with that person, try to understand what they're talking about. And then after that, If it's still something you don't agree with, that's great. If you do agree with it, do a little more research, start learning a little more. And it's a long road. I mean, even with our politics, man, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff from both sides that is said today, but I learn a lot. I learn a lot from both sides.
Doesn't that make you more powerful? I mean, if you've got an opinion and then you listen to someone else and take on their opinion as well, or knowledge, all of a sudden you've got this knowledge and that knowledge. Doesn't that make you more powerful if you only just had this knowledge?
If you know how to think, and that's another big problem in the world, is people they don't teach it in school, but you have to know how to think, because just having opinions in your head doesn't make them
Mm,
knowledge. Because you have to also, there's a lot of bad information out there, right? There's a lot of just wrong opinions. I mean, I can't get away from Instagram or TikTok without seeing at least one flat earther on there, right? So it's like there's just a lot of things that just don't make sense. Now, I have that knowledge in my head. Am I ever going to use the fact that the earth is flat? No.
mm.
I'm pretty sure it's a globe, right? There's a lot of things. I believe in gravity. So there's just a lot of things that you just got to have your head. But I'll listen to them. I mean, I'm actually entertained by them a lot of times, because they do all these crazy experiments, and they'll try to convince you otherwise, and a lot of them just don't make any sense.
Mm.
So you gotta think for yourself. You gotta be able to take those opinions, take that information, mull it around in your head, put your own spin to it, and then either use it or don't.
Because that's from that what you're talking about there. And this is where for people dealing with their life, and some people have difficult lives, and I know from my perspective, there's times where I made my life difficult. I used to think it was life, but when I look at it, and go, well, that was me doing it. Is that a case where we go back to even Napoleon Hill talked about Think and Grow Rich, and I think it's in the Bible where it talks about as you think, so you shall be.
Mhm.
That when you talk using that example of the flat earthers, and no offense to the flat earthers, but if you're offended, that's your offense, not me. And but from that perspective, is it a case of we we think a certain way because we choose to, and then we justify it, and then we create this reality which from in life, I think life is pretty easy. There's if you follow some key principles, and you've got them in your book as well, um, things become very. You look after your health, your body is going to be in peak functioning ability, and your life is going to be easy. That's not a difficult thing from a yeah, it's not a difficult thing at all. It's just it's not difficult to do that. We make it difficult. And do you think that that perception, we're still talking about the ego here, that we want to justify our beliefs, we want to be right. What do you think causes that need to want to be right?
Oh, it's definitely ego. I mean, at the end of the day, I think again, it's a combination of ego and lack of self awareness. Again, I
Mm,
mean, I want to be right, you want to be right, but that's not the point. The point is that you need to be able to tell yourself, shut up and listen for a second. It's not saying that you're wrong. It's saying that you may learn something new that you didn't have. And a lot of times, your mindset or the things or belief structures or everything that we base everything on is based on the knowledge that's in our heads, right? And if we're
mm.
missing a bit of information, we may be coming to the wrong conclusion. And that's why I listen to the flat earthers. Maybe one day they will say something that will convince, man, I was wrong all along, right? But I haven't heard that yet.
Is it a case of wanting to be right, or because when you said that want to be right, because when you said I want to be right, I originally jumped back and go, no, I was like, I want to get to where I want to go as quickly as possible. I'm
Mhm.
pretty lazy generally. That's why I'm so busy, because I'm so lazy. I just want to get stuff done as quickly as possible. So I'm finding ways to innovate and do things much faster. So as soon as someone gives me a new idea that gets me there faster, that's I go, "Oh, I'll take that, thank you," because it gets me there quicker. Is it a case where that that might be the different shifters? Like, we wanna be right, and you come back because this is why you've got goals at the start. If you're not clear about where your goals are, all of a sudden your focus is on being right. Does that where that connection may fall?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you definitely want to get somewhere, but I think there's still people out there that have no idea where they want to get to,
That's my point.
and they're
That's why
just out
goals are
there
so
to be
important.
argumentative.
Yeah. So they're not clear about where they're going. They've got an opinion, but really just floating there.
Hmm.
And without having a direction, all of a sudden it becomes about being right as opposed to going, okay, how can I use this to get to where I want to go? And I steal from Shakespeare, who wrote nothing in Hamlet, scene 2, act 2, nothing's good or bad, thinking makes it so. So anything that happens, if it's neutral, if it's not good or bad, you go, well, if you know where you're going, well, how do I use this to get where I'm going? And that process becomes more efficient. But is that need to be right, do you think, linked to someone, because they don't know where they're going, that
Yeah, no,
they are, it's this,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of, like, again, it's self-awareness, because if you're not
Mm,
aware of what you want, what you need, where you're going, what you're doing at this very moment, it becomes really easy to just put your mind on autonomous run and spit out the same old stuff over and over again. And
yeah.
it's all emotion driven, right? Because a lot of
Mm,
the stuff that is like that is because it makes us feel a certain way. It's either anger or jealousy or whatever. And then all of a sudden these words just start coming out. And you have to be right at that point because you feel the way you feel. You're very vested into what you're saying. And a lot of people just get themselves into trouble with saying stuff that's just stupid.
So with the book, I mean, I love how you've broken it up, and it is a very easy read. And now I've read it a couple of times, and also the workbook as well. Would you recommend, people buying the book, have a read of the book first, and then buy the workbook, or buy them together? How would you um, suggest people digest the books?
So I say get whatever medium works for you to get the book knowledge. And what I mean by that is, like, I have it on Audible, I have it in written format. If you enjoy a Kindle, I have it on there. But the idea is get that information first. See if you like it, right? See if it resonates with you. And then if that does resonate and you need more, there's two avenues. One is take the other books that are in my book and start your path from that journey side, and you can start getting more information just based on the books that are in there. The workbook is a great medium for anybody that's an experiential learner. That if you need to write stuff in order to learn something, that's a great medium for you to do that. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the workbook is for everybody. Just like the reading the actual book as compared to Audible, there's a different crowd for that. But definitely start with the book, and then work your way to the workbook if you think that that's something that will benefit you.
Awesome. And what would be your key, we're winding up now, what would be your key takeaways if for the people listening, what would you want them to take away from this interview in relation to your book?
No matter where you are in life, you can do anything. And I truly, truly believe that. You just don't know what anything means for you. And that's why you got to start this journey. Start the journey, get yourself into a place where you could actually start exploring what you want and what should be in your life. And that's really the exciting part, because there may be someone out there that thinks they want to be a doctor or thinks they want this out of life, and when they start their journey, they're going to end up somewhere completely different. And that's exciting, right? Because they may end up becoming a teacher and fulfilling themselves, because that's what they end up doing is helping all these kids. There's so much that could be, but I would say just take a step back, read the book, and then from there just start putting these things into practice and see what happens.
Awesome. Victor, so wonderful to have you on the show to share the detail behind accessing your true potential, for core principles to being the best version of you. Listeners, highly recommend the book. I've got it. I've got the workbook. It's fabulous, but very easy read, but packed with so much wonderful, useful core knowledge as well. Victor, thank you very much for making the time, and I look forward to catching up again in the future.
Damien, it was awesome. Thank you again for having me on the show.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.